What is up, everyone? Bryan from Arena Deckless here, doing something different this week. If you listen to our podcast, you've certainly heard our question of the week segment. We take those questions from our lovely patrons over in our Discord, and we only answer one question every week, but we get a lot of questions. And I thought this week I would try going through all the questions not chosen for the podcast right here and just answering everyone's questions. A lot of good questions this week, so I don't want to go super long. Let's get right into it. We'll start with friend of the podcast, Yoman5. Yoman wants to know, how do you convince people that they're better than they think they are, especially qualifying for the MCQ weekend, and that they should play the good deck without fear of mirrors? I think I have a good answer to this because I've used this technique in the past, and I also just think it makes a lot of sense. If you don't believe you're good enough to play a mirror on MCQ weekend, why do you think you're good enough to play on the Pro Tour? Or put another way, why would it matter if you were to qualify for the Pro Tour? You're just going to show up there, not do very well, go home. That'll be the end of it. Nothing really to write home about, nothing too exciting there. If you believe in yourself and you think you deserve to play on the Pro Tour, then you have to believe you are better than some portion of the field. There's no way you're entering this event as the worst player in the field with the belief that you deserve to play on the Pro Tour. It just doesn't make any sense. So if you think this is something you earn, something you have a possibility to get, then you just have to have the mindset that there's something about you that is Pro Tour worthy. That doesn't mean you have to believe you're the best player in the world, but I think you have to believe you can hang. And if you can't start there, I think you're mostly wasting your time by choosing to even sign up for the MCQ. And believe in yourself. You are much better than you're giving yourself credit for. If you've qualified for the MCQ weekend, you can play a mirror. You will be fine. I promise you. Next question, Sam Michaels, Overzealous Axe, wants to know, do you have a specific routine you try to stick to for tournaments? How does that change between an arena tournament versus paper? I will say I try to keep my setup the same for every paper tournament I play. Basically what deck box I use, what things I bring with me. I like that to be very constant just because I have mechanical issues. So it's important for me to know where everything is, to have the same dice, have them be in the same place every time. Otherwise I get overwhelmed by that. As far as how that changes between an arena tournament versus a paper tournament, obviously that is not mirrored. And that's about only routine I have. I mean, all these arena tournaments I've played, be it Fandom Legends or Twitch Rivals, I just kind of sit down and play. And some days I'm listening to music, some days it's quiet. I don't know. I haven't seen the need to set up any kind of routine in that context. I am sure that there are some benefits to it. If it's something that puts your mind at ease, go for it. Me personally, I haven't needed to do it when it comes. Oberon wants to know, assuming Oko and Urza get banned in Modern, what deck archetypes are poised to fill the metagame void? I imagine 2019 cards will still be prominent. Yep, they absolutely will. Once Upon a Time is still there. If those are the cards that get touched, I still like what Primeval Titan is capable of in this format. It got a big upgrade with Field of the Dead, and there is some debate whether Oko is actually worth including in Amulet. So that is one deck which will be completely fine should Oko go. I am actually not sure I want to make the assumption Urza gets banned. I don't know if I want to go into why. Whatever. Here's my thought. Modern Horizons, huge success upon release. Sells lots and lots of product. Everyone loves it. GPs are huge. They're going back to the well. I don't think there's any world where they don't make another Modern exclusive set, be it Modern Horizons 2 or some other way of doing this experiment again. You ban another card from Modern Horizons, at some point you have to ask, what are we doing here? If you're just going to make overpowered stuff that has to get banned in a bunch of formats, you're not really accomplishing anything worthwhile. You're not moving the format forward. And I think that could start to blunt excitement for the next Modern Horizon set, specifically when you talk about Urza, Mythic Rare. It's one thing to ban Arkham's Astrolabe, which most people, you're talking 50-cent card. Obviously, I'm an idiot and bought foils. So I will be a little bit more upset. But I think you can stomach that a little bit more if you have to ban something to reduce the power level of Urza. I think you first ban Oko, let it play out, see if that weakens Urza enough where it just is then level with the rest of the field. And it might. It really might. I think the blue-green based Urza decks are so much better than the Grixis decks used to be or any Warza deck used to be. Obviously, Oko did something very, very meaningful for that particular archetype. Give it a shot, let it play out, let Urza stand for the time being is how I would approach this format. But that's not your question. You want to know what deck archetypes are filled to poised to fill the metagame void. Anything with creatures comes back once you're done with Oko, which is what I'm assuming will happen. I think Oko does have to leave. Collected company decks become interesting again, particularly with Heliod. You can see if that is actually worth building around. Spike Feeder Heliod setups might get into the picture. And we just get our text boxes back, which should be a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to that world where Oko is finally gone from Modern. Moving on, Robert Taylor, Fire Shoes, wants to know, this Arena Mythic qualifier is unique in that there are no open deck lists for day 2 since they got rid of that portion of the event. With your list in complete secrecy for the entire tournament, is it better to include a couple cards that aren't normally stock but are high impact when the opponent doesn't know to play around them? I mean, if they were that high impact, wouldn't they just be stock? Am I missing something? Like, if they're that good, you would just play them. So I don't really know what type of cards you're talking about here. The reason you do the opposite of this and include cards which force your opponent to play around them is because they have to do it with that information shared. And you don't have any way of disseminating this information here. I think you play the best version of your deck. Looking for cards that are quote-unquote high impact doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Moving on, Harrison Matthew, do you have any pacing heuristics, rhythms when playing the arena qualifier events, such as any parallels to approaching ladder in with when to take breaks, not take breaks if you feel like you're running hot in the zone, spacing throughout the time window, etc. Play when you're ready to play. I don't think you need to overcomplicate this. I think you will feel when you are ready to put some games in, when you are in a mental state that is positive and focused on what you're trying to get done. Sorry, Harrison, I scrolled your question off. You know the answer to this. Trust yourself. Trust what your body and your brain is telling you. Play when you are ready to play. Not Tim Turner says, how do you guys combat tournament fatigue? I'm trying to kick my caffeine soda habits, and I'm trying to find new ways to still be mentally awake through a 9-round event. Practice. Mental fatigue is the same as physical fatigue, and they overlap. So get yourself in shape, work out, exercise. All those things will benefit your endurance. Spend some days playing really long sessions on Arena and let that build up your callus, as it were, and get a little bit deeper into those runs. Learn how to play for a long time. Just practice like any other muscle. Andre Lepach, Numeric, I don't know if I pronounced any of that right, wants to know, do you approach paper and arena tournaments differently? And if so, what is the difference? I always wear pants to paper tournaments. Do not. Ben Buzz 790, what is the most time efficient way to practice? At this point, I think it is actually watching Magic. If you are the type of person who can consume a lot of information simultaneously, I think watching a ton of streams at once is a huge boon. I did this during the Throne of Eldraine pre-release period. I just opened up 16 streams and watched a bunch at once, and I felt like I learned so much. If you're not a multitasker like that and can't consume a bunch of information at once, watch 2x VODs. I think you can learn more if you're not the person playing the games. Fort Sport, what's the best deck? Fort Sport, I let you all know we were going to do an episode on preparing you for MCQ weekend. Do you think we didn't tell you what we thought the best deck was? Listen to the podcast. It's there. Alex Vaz, when in preparation for a big tournament like the MCQ weekend, having in mind a metagame and a deck, how do you filter through the flex spaces on your deck and your sideboard? Do you use them for your worst matchup or for the most popular deck? How do you make those small choices that can give you an edge on a large field? A lot of this is being sure you can get to the 75 you want to get to in a particular matchup, and that a lot of times will demand some of your flex slots. A lot of it is an anticipation of the metagame. How often do you expect to play a certain matchup? Do you want to be more pre-boarded against them? And what is the return on boarding in that fashion? If you main deck 2 cards for your Fires matchup, but they only get you 3%, and you could have used that to play a card for your Jund matchup and a card for your blue-white matchup, that would have got you 12%. Was it worth including those 2 cards? Probably not. So it's a lot of subtle calculation, risk reward, and value analysis. And so much of that, for me at this point, is internalized. I wish I could give you some hard metrics. I think you just got to practice it more. Start to pick. Jeff Pica wants to know, taking your first loss in this event can be rough, especially if it's early. Since this event, from the convenience of your computer, what is the best way, or how would you do it personally, to take a break and reset before starting the grind again? I would go exercise 100%. I would go out for a run if I lost my first match of the day. And for me, that does a lot to change my mindset, just get me in a different place. Showering too often does it for me. Like if I can just get a shower in real quick, I find that to be a nice reset. It feels like a fresh start to my day. So either of those, I think, is a really nice option. Red Necra asks, what did you find were the best ways to learn? Like, what were your big moments of realization that let you start working smart and not hard? When I realized I could take more from watching than doing. And once you embrace that and are willing to ask a bunch of questions from people you respect and ape their style and understand, like really actually get to the point where you're understanding why they're doing what they're doing and not just watching them do it in retrospect, like getting inside their heads in a lot of ways, then you start benefiting the most from watching as opposed to playing. And also, even if you're not doing like the multi-streaming thing, if you're just watching your friends play, you get to watch from both sides. And I find when I watch both sides of a matchup, I really get a awesome sense of what's going on. And to the same fashion, when I play both sides of a matchup, I can understand a lot really quickly. But being able to watch and take as much as possible away from that was a huge, huge boon to my. Gum asks, do you feel the qualifiers, arena or not, have distinctly different metas, other high-level events? Mostly no. I think that people are incentivized to work really hard on them because there are tremendous, tremendous returns from spiking one of these. So the really strong innovation will often be saved for something like this event, but so few people are apt to have anything really groundbreaking that's not really an effect on the meta. That's just an individual person's experience. And I think overall, the meta trends pretty closely with what is going on in the real world. Schneides wants to know if competitive Magic was structured like competitive poker, i.e., you get multiple tournaments with varying entry options. I'm just going to stop. You can't do this. Like, whether this is a net positive or not is irrelevant. This is never going to exist. You can't do this. You'll run afoul of gambling laws. Not worth spending. Underdog, what arena deck suggestions do you have for those of us who have to, well, it is optimal to double queue for the MCQ weekend and GP ATX? The only thing this should affect is whether you can realistically complete your matches in time and your mental capacity. I can't answer this. If you think you can play fast enough that you can play your matches and play the GP with Jund, then go for it. But it's all about your own capacity. If you're playing a bad deck for the purpose of having faster matchups, then you should choose one of these events, because I think you're just dooming yourself in both if you're making any suboptimal deck selection for the purpose of maximizing your. Firemind 12. Firemind 12, you got your question answered. Show your arena deck list pin. Jake the Jackal, do you try and structure your deck differently based on the estimated size of the tournament? The MCQ weekend is quite open, has players might not normally be in a constructed tournament from limited rank queue. Do you, and if so, how take into account the player base that might be in a tournament? To some extent, but I think this field is so large and it's so hard to anticipate how limited participation changes deck selection. Like, what is the answer? Do you just say, oh, these people play mono red? I think that's dismissive in a lot of ways. I think it's belittling people's experience that they're generating from their limited play. I think if you are a strong limited player, you can probably pick up a constructed deck and learn it if you care enough about this tournament. So I guess the question then becomes buy-in. Like, what is cheap to build and what doesn't have a lot of rares? And I mostly feel like the number of people who are operating under those constraints are small enough that this is not something you should be accounting for. And if you agree that they're doing this to their own, against their own interests, then they should be less likely to be present in later rounds anyway. So you don't have to account for them to the same. Tortilla Frisbee wants to know, do you envision Arena expanding the abilities of users to rent cards or create them for cheaper to allow for more playtests and expand the meta going forward? No. Their business. They want money. RH Will, what sideboard cards could be main deck tech for the current standard beyond what's currently being played? I think you see the best ones regularly. I think Ether Gust, occasionally Noxious Grasp, but Ether Gust certainly better right now. Sees the appropriate amount of play. People seem to have seized on the idea that sideboard cards belong in the main deck in a lot of instances. Juha Hakala, Haksolte. Should the tournament be created with normal win-lose brackets so your first loss would not automatically remove you from the tournament, especially when the game we play has no small amount of draw dependence? I don't think your first loss automatically removes you from this tournament. And I would assume normal win-lose bracket, just difficult to administer. I think this is just like a simple solution, probably somewhat suboptimal, but ultimately this is what we have. New Year, new Sparg. What's the best advice you'd give to someone who doesn't achieve the goals they set for this weekend? Ask yourself if you set yourself up to achieve your goals. That's really what matters. Because if you have hard goals, like I want to qualify this weekend, you're ignoring the impact of variance. You do not have complete control over your outcomes in Magic, no matter how well you play, no matter how well you test, no matter how well you prepare. There's still a tremendous amount variance inherent in Magic, and you have to be very clear about your goals in this space. Otherwise, you will constantly be disappointed. So first of all, set good goals. Second of all, give yourself a break and just be honest with yourself. And if you have done what you could to achieve your goals, I think you get to give yourself a pass. Il Maestro, given the structural changes to this qualifier, is Arena proving to be an acceptable platform for the growth of competitive Magic at the start of 2020? Yeah, I mean, there's new people. There's new people involved in OP. It looks much different. I'm not a fan of a lot of things going on, but other things I am a fan of. And there's no question that these weekends generate some excitement. They're really high stakes Magic from the comfort of your home. Granted, there was the Moto PTQs and Mox qualifiers before, which were close, but I would argue that the EV on these is, well, the EV is not higher, but the optimal outcome is even higher because spiking one of these Arena PTs is a huge payout. Say nothing of what it does for your chances to get into something like the Rivals League, MPL, such a small field, so huge to get one of these qualifications. So there's something special happening this weekend. I wish the overall plan was more cohesive, but it's hard to knock what's going on. DT Lurch, what if anything would you do differently for the MCQ weekend than for a standard GP? Probably nothing. Probably nothing. Find the best deck. Always your game plan. Should WotC stop printing powerful 1 green 2/3s, and if so, why? No. I have no reason to be mad at powerful 1 green 2/3s. They have not done any wrongs against me and my family, so keep doing it if that's what your jam is. Braden, are there major differences between preparing for a MTGO arena event than there is for a paper Magic tournament? I feel like I've addressed this mostly. Same game. Do what puts you in the best position to be comfortable and to win. Mass Swan, there is a wealth of information available for people to consume, from deck lists and sideboard guides on Twitter, several websites, No, I can't scroll down. All right, you're going to have to take my word for this one. Mass Swan says there's a wealth of information available for people to consume. Decklist and Sideboard guys on Twitter, several websites that have written and video content daily, coaching sites, Twitch streams, YouTubers, podcasts, and more. What is a good way to filter out relevant information from the unnecessary? There are only so many hours in a day. People have differing opinions on cards, decks, and even metagames. I have some bad news, Mass Swan. There is no such thing as useless information, because whether it is correct or not, still tells you what people are thinking. That is extremely, extremely valuable information. Now, does that mean it's all of the same value? No. So if your question is how do you find the highest value information, you need to learn who you can trust. And I think that's hard in the Magic space. I know for years when I was not really plugged in and just trying to find my way into competitive Magic, there were a lot of really mediocre Magic players giving advice and doing it in a really poor fashion and swearing to you up and down that their deck was broken on a week-to-week basis, and it never was. It really stole some tournaments from me, and it was my own fault for not properly vetting information, but I believe them. And you can understand how being a little naive and the power of the internet can push you in a lot of directions. So ultimately, you need to evaluate the information being given to you, and that's what I did. It took some time, and I wish I could get that time back. But I think if you follow someone's content, you get the sense of who they are as a content creator, what they're trying to do for you, and when they really deserve your attention. One of the things about making weekly content is that I basically have to present some decks to you every week over on Star City. And I try to be very frank with my level of confidence in a deck. I never ever want to mislead someone into playing a deck that is still in a rough state. That doesn't mean I won't present it and hope that people carry it forward, but in general, I try to be very clear. This is something that's tournament ready. This is something I have played and I have faith in. Go for it. This is something that is not tournament ready. Please do your own work on it. In general, if you find people are making that distinction for you, I do think they have earned your trust a little bit more. Some people present everything as very, very good. That's problematic. You very quickly learn who the people are in your group who tell you they broke it all the time, and very quickly learn to dismiss that. So I wish there was a shortcut for this. There are a ton of opinions, and like I said, they all have value. Knowing what people are thinking is huge. Ultimately, you're just going to have to figure out who you can trust, get your stable of content creators who you always look towards and think will always bring you valuable information. And once you have that stable, those are the people you go to over and over. Final question comes from TRS T Chamber 5. What is the best way to improve your game without actually playing Magic? Watch, listen, learn. Hang out in the Arena Decklist Discord. That's a great place to learn a lot about Magic. But absorb yourself in the information and understand that playing Magic is pretty far down on your priority list if you just are trying to learn. Oftentimes, you will get way, way more from just thinking about the game, watching the game. Critically, you don't get it passively. You have to work when watching. That's the big thing that I find a lot of people don't do. They just let the game kind of wash over them. You engage really hard while you're watching, I think it's even better than playing the game. And that has been my biggest learning tool by far. So, hope everyone enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a comment down below, throw a like, throw a sub, all that good stuff. Let me know if there's something I can do a little bit better in presenting this to you. If the response is positive, I'll try and do this more often. So definitely let me know what you think. I will see you all soon here on the Arena Decklist YouTube channel.